When it comes to saving your files, Illustrator offers you plenty of choice. Now, if you want to continue working on your artwork, you're always best to save a copy as an Illustrator file, because that gives you access to all the supported options within Illustrator. So I really recommend, if you're saving as something to give to someone else, that you save a copy. And saving a copy will save another copy of your artwork, but keep this copy unspoilt. So we could say save a copy for CS4, for example. So someone who has CS4, we could save a copy for them. So I could just save it into this folder that I'm in at the moment, click on save, and I would choose CS4. And that means that even people with only CS4 can open this document. If I was to save it as CS6, the default, then only people with CS6 would be able to open it. This way I can make it backwards compatible. But notice when I save a copy, now it's warning me that some features may not be supported. I'm okay with that, so I'm going to click OK. But notice that that's saved a copy in that folder. It hasn't affected this, my original copy. Now you can also say save as, and save as will give you a choice of EPS files, Illustrator template files, which is a good option, which I'll talk about in a minute, PDF files, so if you're outputting for print, for example, FXG files, SVG files, and compressed SVG files are the choices here. But if we talk about Illustrator templates, that's quite a good option because that's going to lock the file and prevent someone from saving it. So as an archive option, I quite like to choose template files. So what other options do we have? Well, we have save as template, which goes directly to the template setting. And you can also save as slices. So if you're doing web work and you want to have different compression for different areas of the image, you can create slices, and this will allow you to save those selected slices. If we have a look at this image here, this save for web image, maybe I want to save a copy of this to put online, and it's a very complex image. Instead of going save as and saving as a PDF or something like that, what I can do is I can say save for web, and that opens up a dedicated workspace for saving for web. Now I've just noticed I've got a little white edge there, but we'll ignore that for now. And anyway, this optimizes it for the web specifically. You can have a look at your original image and your optimized image and make sure there's not too much difference between them. You can choose between different formats. So there's GIF, which will use a color table, or there's JPEG, which we're all familiar with. And normally if I'm outputting JPEG, I'll output maximum quality. Now you'll notice that when I change the quality, the file size increases. So it's telling me down here what the final file size will be. We could also make it smaller. It's a little bit large for the web. So if I make it 400 width and then accept that, I can see a preview of how it's going to look at that size before I output it. And that's reduced the size quite significantly. There's all sorts of settings for quality. You can add a little bit of blur if that helps improve your image. And then once you're done, you can also choose, by the way, PNG. So if you'd rather output as a PNG file, you'll find that that might even be smaller. And it supports transparency as well. So click on save, and then we just save it wherever we want to save it. So I'm just going to save it into my documents folder. And that saved a JPEG for us. Again, it's kept my image non-destructively, so I still have all access to all of the individual components of my image. So I'm not actually saving over the Illustrator file. Now I can also go to File Export, and Export gives me these options: PNG, BMP, DWG, DXF, Swift files for Flash, Photoshop files. Now Photoshop is great. If you had layers, let's just cancel that for a second. So here I have lots of layers that I'm going to use for animation. And I tend to quite like using vector files for animation because in After Effects I can continuously rasterize them. But it tends to be a little bit slow. So sometimes if my animation is a bit slow to render, what I'll do is open up the file in Illustrator and I'll go to Export and choose PSD, and I'll export it as a PSD. Okay, you can choose the color space. Normally I'll choose RGB. You can choose the resolution. Screen resolution's fine for what I need. Or if I wanted to zoom in, I could just make it a little bit bigger. And then you can choose to write layers. And if I click OK, That's writing a Photoshop file with all of those layers in it. And let's see if I can just open that up in Photoshop. So I'll just open that up in the background in Photoshop. And here we have the image in Photoshop. And you'll notice it places all of my layers into groups. So you'll notice I can switch layers on and off. So if you want to maintain your layers, but convert your Illustrator file to bitmap, you can convert it to Photoshop layers. So that's just a few options for outputting, exporting, and saving your Illustrator files.